Well, Russia has articulated what I believe to be a cognizable claim under Article 51 of the United Nations Charter. And people need to understand that the United Nations Charter provides the only two existing exceptions to nations going to war. That one of the purposes of creating the United Nations in the aftermath of the Second World War was to ban warfare, and to say that people who carry out wars of aggression. I mean, again, the Nuremberg Tribunal concluded that wars of aggression were the ultimate war crime because from that war of aggression, all other crimes come from. So there's only two exceptions to the ban on war. One is the United Nations determining through the Security Council via a Chapter 7 resolution passed under Chapter 7 of the UN Charter that United Nations members can use force to resolve a threat to international peace and security. The other one is Article 51. That's the inherent right to self-defense. That no one can be denied the ability to defend themselves. Now, people say, well, yeah, but was Russia attacked? So now we come to some interesting interpretations of Article 51. The notion of preemptive self-defense, meaning that I don't have to wait. If someone's sitting there promising to hit me in the face with a baseball bat, they pick up a baseball bat, they take 7 practice swings, and they come walking to me with their arms cocked with the bat, ready to smack me in the face. I don't have to wait for him to hit me in the face. I can assume he's going to hit me in the face, and the closer he gets to me, I can say, this is an imminent threat, so I can walk out, punch him in the throat, and drop him, and say, preemptive self-defense. Now, the Russians have, people say, okay, but Ukraine wasn't threatening Russia. You can talk about Maidan, you can talk about Donbass, but Ukraine wasn't threatening Russia. So, Ritter, wrong answer. Except, again, there's these exceptions. And it's not exceptions that Russia's making up out of the blue. These are exceptions that were made up by NATO, for instance, the United States. Give me an example, 1999. NATO decided they were going to bomb Serbia. They cited Article 51. Now, Serbia didn't attack NATO, didn't attack a single NATO member, but they cited what they called the ongoing genocide carried out by Serbian forces against Serbian Kosovar Albanians living in Kosovo, and that this ongoing genocide represented a threat of an imminent nature that needed to be dealt with. But the problem was no individual nation could assert any sort of official, it didn't apply to them. Germany wasn't attacked. France wasn't attacked. Spain wasn't attacked. America wasn't attacked. None of them together were attacked. None of them could feel the threat. But now they said NATO is asserting its Article 51 rights under collective self-defense. And you say, well, wait a minute, how can NATO? They're not a UN member. But NATO, in connection with the other UN states, becomes a collective security alliance grouping. It has a special status that allows them to assert collective security rights. And so NATO said we felt threatened by the genocide, and therefore the rest of the NATO members, individual members, are joining with us as collective preemptive self-defense under Article 51. They set the standard, not me. Now, what Russia did is Russia said the situation in Donbass is an ongoing security threat, except that Donbass is Ukrainian, and Russia can't assert any sort of collective security arrangement over Ukraine. Then the two constituent elements of Donbass, Lugansk and Donetsk, said, well, we want to become independent. We request Russia to recognize our independence. And Russia did. Russia said, I recognize your independent status. And then they formed a collective security agreement. Now, people say, well, wait a minute. Donetsk and Lugansk aren't recognized by the UN as being UN members, so they can't assert any Article 51. They're not. Russia is. It's part of a collective security arrangement with the newly independent entities of Donetsk and Lugansk that are now outside of sovereign control of Ukraine. There's Russia's case. And it's as valid as the case that NATO made in 1999. It's more valid than the preemptive self-defense case the United States made to invade Iraq in 2003. Both the NATO case and the United States case in 2003 were predicated on false information, manufactured information. There was no genocide in Serbia. There were no WMD in Iraq. But we do know that there was an ongoing bombardment of civilians in Donbass that killed 14,000 people. And it was continuing at the time that Russia made its claim. Russia has further enhanced the legitimacy of its claim by pointing to the imminent threat posed by 60 to 120,000 Ukrainian troops massed in Donbass, which they claim were preparing to launch an attack on Lugansk and Donetsk, therefore the preemptive necessity to attack them. The Russian case is rock solid. There will be people that can argue against it, but what you can't say is that Russia carried out a premeditated illegal war of aggression. The Russians have sought to articulate a legitimacy to their claim that is as strong as earlier claims. And even if you disagree with it, you can't say that this is an illegal war of aggression. Now, just because you say that you have the lawful authority to carry out a military action doesn't mean that you're hands off. I mean, you can do anything you want. Just like if you have no legitimacy to carry it out, it doesn't mean, well, since we broke the law going in, we can do anything we want, and we can only be held accountable for breaking the law. No, the Russian troops will still be held fully accountable, regardless of the legitimacy of their actions in going into Ukraine for whatever they do in Ukraine. They still are going to be accountable to international humanitarian law, which means that they can't kill civilians indiscriminately, and they can't indiscriminately destroy civilian infrastructure. Now, a key aspect of international law in this perspective is intent, and you can tell a lot by the orders that people are given. In fact, most of the convictions that have been done for Serbians, for instance, during the Bosnian conflict, was based upon orders that Serbian leaders gave to kill Bosnian civilians, to destroy Bosnian. That's what got them, not the actual deaths. Newsflash: people die in war. Civilians die by huge numbers. It's a tragedy, but it's not a crime unless there was intent on the part of the parties who inflicted the damage to indiscriminately kill civilians or destroy civilian property. The Russians have made it clear, and they have orders to this effect, that their troops are to minimize the potential of harm to Ukrainian civilians, minimize the potential of damage to Ukrainian infrastructure. This is the whole Syrian approach that they talk about, that soft approach going in. And the Russians have acted in a way that appears to reflect this, at least broad brush. The Russians avoided unnecessary conflict in urban areas, withdrew when confronted, bypassed civilians. They don't fire on civilians indiscriminately, etc. Now, people can say, wait a minute, Ritter, I've seen. What are you doing? I've seen the photographs. The buildings are blown up. The civilians are dead. I know, because the Ukrainians decided to fight there. The Ukrainians decided, remember the story, it was big for a while. They blew up a shopping center in Kiev.